Either, if you want to retain that data and use it beyond the dissertation, you've got to go back to your participants and say, do you mind if we use your data for publication? Because they may only have consented to participate on the basis that it was for a master's dissertation, not for publication in a journal or a periodical. So you might have to go back to them, or you get the permission up front. If you think this is going to be a fantastic bit of research and it might merit publication in a journal paper or an article, you could get the permission up front. It's unlikely that you will actually think that ambitiously. And then at the end, the data should be destroyed. Normally it's within about 3 months of your award, just in case someone appealed. Someone might appeal the dissertation, and therefore you'd have to go back and look at the dissertation and the evidence file. So we hang on to the data for about 3 months, and then we would destroy the evidence files. That you provide anonymity to participants. Now this one, it's generally good practice to offer the participants anonymity. Ask yourself the question, does the reader, does the person marking your dissertation need to know the names of the participants? Generally speaking, no. They don't need to know their name. They might need to know that they hold a certain role in a company. So they might have a job title in Arabs, or it might be working for another organisation, could be a local authority. I mean, if you went and interviewed the Mayor of London, it would be pointless making him anonymous, because you all know it's Boris Johnson, yeah? So at some point, the job title gives it away. But some people would simply label the participants interviewee A, B, C, D, E. So think, do you need to disclose their name? Generally speaking, no, so therefore you can offer them anonymity. And generally it's good practice to offer it. Not everyone might accept it. Some interviewees might say, no, I don't want to be anonymous, I want you to name me as saying that because that's what I think. I've not got a problem with that. Name them. Commercial confidentiality may need to be provided. I've given you the example where maybe a dissertation containing confidential information might be kept away from other students in the future, kept off the library shelves. Adhere to the Data Protection Act or its equivalent in your country of origin. Yes, you've got a question?
I've got a question regarding the confidentiality and the participant consent. Sure, I will write in a company that has exactly the confidentiality, so it will not be published. Do I also need the consent of all the people I'm going to interview in that company?
You should still be getting a consent from them to say they are happy to participate on the terms and conditions that you set out in front of them. So you still need the participants' consent. Record it in some way. There are other ways of recording it, and I'll touch on that, but you still need that. The confidentiality bit is just how far it goes, and I've got a slide where I'll talk about confidentiality because there's some misunderstanding around that concept. So adhere to data protection. Is anyone in this room likely to conduct their research outside of Europe? Everyone's conducting their research outside of Europe, just because outside of Europe the other countries have Data Protection Act regimes or not, or nothing. And we have a particular problem with data transfer from one country to another. We've even got a problem, for example, with SurveyMonkey. Who's used SurveyMonkey before? Anyone use SurveyMonkey? What do you reckon? Is it any good? Do you like it? I think people go to it because it's the one they know. I think it's rubbish. If you use the free version, do you get the raw data back? No, you get an analysis of it. Where is the data held? Where is it? You've asked a question, however many people responded, where does that data go? Is that an ethical issue? Held on a server either in Luxembourg or the United States. You don't get the raw data unless you pay for the premium service. And that data is still necessarily held in Luxembourg or the United States. And the US has different data laws. So we as a university are looking to move away from SurveyMonkey because we don't think it's actually very good. So, generally speaking, I know I'm offering you peculiar examples, they're the extremes. Generally speaking, for probably 90% of you, that all you have to do is get consent, provide anonymity and safeguard confidentiality where necessary. That will probably be enough. So, follow the faculty procedure, submit a registration and approval form, provide participants with a clear, accurate brief of the purpose and conduct of your research, use the participant consent form. For telephone interviews, anyone here likely to do telephone interviews? No? None of you? Yeah, telephone interviews are pretty powerful because it means you don't have to travel, but you can get a lot of good information in a smaller time, shorter time than face to face. If you do that, you can record their verbal consent. So at the start of the interview on the phone, you're recording it, and you'll set out the terms and conditions, get their verbal agreement, and then you can just create an audio file and submit that in your evidence file. Or you could provide a transcript of the interview with a covering letter and the standard statement. You send it to them, they sign it, say, yes, this is a fair and accurate reflection of the interview, and I give my consent, and they send it back to you. If you're doing a questionnaire, we always say to our students, I don't know whether Michelle has the same requirement in your cohort, that it should always be agreed with your supervisor before sending it out, because first drafts sometimes the questionnaires, they almost make me cry. That they are sometimes excruciatingly bad. And you do say to the student, seriously, what do you think someone would do if that arrived on their desk? Honestly. And most of them are honest enough to say, yeah, they'd put it straight in the bin, wouldn't they? And the fact you're saying, I'm a Northumbria student, you're not allowed to use our logo, but you can say, I'm a student at Northumbria University studying MSc Project Management, yeah? And you're representing yourself as a student of our institution. We would like, therefore, your covering letter and questionnaire to be respectable, presentable, yeah? So you're not wasting people's time. And also in the questionnaire, there's a statement. You simply embed this, and again, the people at the back, you can't see this necessarily, but it's on the slide. If you embed the statement in the questionnaire, simply saying, I understand the purpose of this research and agree to participate, by them returning it to you, that is the consent. Because if they don't want to participate, guess what? They don't return it. They return it, they're agreeing to consent. Simple as that. So the evidence file, when you hand your 2 soft-bound copies, or is it hard-bound still?
No, soft.
Soft, what a relief. I did have battles with the previous incumbent who always wanted hard-bound, and I said, oh,
Some of the students
why?
don't want hardbound.
Extra 40 quid a go, isn't it? Something like that. Newcastle University was making a fortune because that's where people tend to go. So that's why upstairs you'll see a lot of them are hard covered with lovely gold embossed lettering on. Thankfully, you just have 2 soft-bound copies and an evidence file. This is what your evidence file should contain. There is a checklist in the faculty research ethics procedure. So participants, respondents. So who did you send your questionnaire out to? Who did you approach for interview? And who responded? Who agreed? Not everyone you sampled would necessarily send something back or agree to be interviewed. The forms signed by participants, the briefing sheet you used, the location of the interviews, the date when those took place, other data collection activities. You could be out doing a pedestrian flow count or some other survey using observation. What, when, yeah? Completed questionnaires, the originals, in different handwriting, in different coloured pen, please. The original notes from the interviews, maybe you take handwritten notes. Electronic data, other material not in the public domain. We don't want research papers that you've read for your literature review. They're in the public domain anyway, but stuff that's not. Good example was, I had a student who did a dissertation on business models of 3rd and 4th tier football clubs in the UK. And he was looking at this balance between the business viability of the club as a football club and the value of the ground and the value of the land on which the football ground sat. Because a lot of 3rd and 4th tier clubs, those of you who are English would know this, possibly it happens in other countries as well, have often relocated and moved to a peripheral site, freeing up a very valuable site for usually residential development. Clubs that are very profitable, viable, the land value relative to their income is very small. So if you think about the land value of Old Trafford, which is on an industrial estate, is very low compared to the net worth of Manchester United Football Club. But if you go down a few divisions, the net worth of the club is much less, but the value of the ground, relatively speaking, is more. And this student did a fantastic dissertation, got a first for it, got a first class degree, but he managed to get a report from the Cass Business School, which is a British-based business school, and they had done a report that was confidential, it hadn't been published, and he got hold of a copy, but he couldn't reference it because it's not in the public domain. So that was the sort of thing he would have put in his evidence file, and then we actually gave it back to him to send back to Cass Business School. So you might find that, because you're doing research in a company, it could be company documents, you might even have to redact documents, you know, where you blank out certain information, could be a redacted copy. Any original notes, workings, the classic one is an architect. You know, architects always design their new project over lunch at a restaurant with paper tablecloths, and they get the pen out, and it's, you know, classic Richard Rogers. This is how, you know, the project's going to look, and then they tear, yeah, the paper tablecloth off. They walk away with it. So when someone asks them 10 years later, where did the original concept come for your project? They'll just get this bit of very old faded tablecloth out and say, that was the idea. I was having lunch with Dickie, and, you know, that was the way it worked out. And any other materials not in the public domain. So that's the sort of stuff you put in your evidence file. Anonymity and confidentiality. Now, I struggle with this using English words, being an English person. You will have your own vocabulary in your heads, and you'll be doing a translation. So given that Michelle and I probably ourselves don't fully understand what these terms mean, certainly the first one, the second one, I can understand this will be difficult for some of you. So anonymity is not too difficult, because it's, do you identify the participants or not? And I've said ideally not. How can you achieve it? Well, one obvious way is data aggregation. If you're doing a big questionnaire and there's 40, 50 people who respond, even if they write their name on the questionnaire, by the time you've aggregated and analysed the data, everyone is anonymised. Yeah? You could use a pseudonym or a generic job title for quotes. The problem with confidentiality is it means different things to different people. Now, you will all have groups of friends, and if you had something very personal to you, it was secret, and you wanted to share it with someone, think about your own friendship groups. There are certain friends you would not tell, because even if you said to them, this is in confidence, you know they'll go blah blah blah, yeah, it's out there, because they don't understand what in confidence means. There are other friends who you would trust and say that this is in confidence, and that's as far as it will go in these four walls, yeah? Go no further. So a lot of people breach confidence, and it may be through ignorance or stupidity, maybe it's because they don't understand what it means. Fundamentally, it means the communication can't be divulged to anyone else. So if you're conducting an interview and someone says, this is in confidence, this is confidential, you put down your pen, turn the recorder off, and you listen to what they have to say. You're not writing it down, you're not recording it. After that, you know that piece of information, but you can't write it in your dissertation. You might use that information to help you understand how the world is, yeah? What processes are at play, particularly around politics, yeah, and relationships, who knows what, who knows who, yeah? So you've got to be careful around that, because if you breach confidentiality in the extreme, if it got into the public domain, someone could take you to court, because it has a legal concept. So actually, a lot of students, when they write, they say, this is, everything you tell me is in confidence. Really? You mean you can't use any of what you hear? Is that what you mean? Is that what you're offering? You're actually not offering that at all. I don't think there's any need to offer confidentiality unless someone feels the need. So when you do an interview, you can say to someone, if at any point you want to tell me something that's confidential, just tell me and I will stop recording, I'll stop writing. Or you could say to them, I don't want to hear anything that's confidential. And for you in your workplaces, you've got to think carefully about this, because you could overstep or step over a line and get yourself or someone else in a bit of trouble. So sometimes it's better not to hear it at all. Someone said, I'm going to tell you a secret, this is in confidence. You might say, actually, I don't want to hear it, thank you. Yeah, I'm better off not knowing. So there's an issue about what can you use if it is confidential or given in confidence. Data Protection Act. So, under the 1998 Act, or its equivalent, so there is an agreement across Europe that means there's pretty much a standardised data protection regime in Europe. You have to keep personal data safe. So we will destroy, or you will destroy the data. Now, most of that data will be in the evidence file. Some of it will be on a laptop. Your U drive gets wiped when you leave this university, so that will disappear off there. You might have it on a flash drive or some other mass storage device. Under that Act, you must delete those files. Officially, you're meant to bring the laptop in and the portable hard drive, and we're meant to look over your shoulder as you delete the files off. Now that's very difficult to actually do in practice, but you should destroy the data. We will destroy whatever you give us. Best thing to do is hand it all in, and we will destroy it for you. Delete files, destroy hard copy, containing personal information. It's mainly around personal information, personally sensitive information. Most of you won't be gathering that sort of information, but if you do, and it's good practice, you don't hang on to data beyond the life of the project. So, I'm just about to sum up now. This is a web page. This is the faculty's web page. For all staff and students, you can get out through it either way. You can see it sits under Student Guide Programme Handbooks, and the title is Ethics and Governance. There's a bit of commentary here which I've written, and there are lots of supporting documents. Okay, so that's a web page you can access, and you can use it really to signpost you to the other documents you might require. This is my final or penultimate slide. Apologies to those of you who don't watch English television series. This is a fly on the wall series. Michelle does? No. I'm not a great watcher of it, but it's a bit of a joke. There's a dreadful, dreadful series of The Only Way is Ethics. I try and turn that around just because it sticks in people's heads. So I say, Towie, the only way is ethics. If you say it, it actually doesn't sound very dissimilar. I imagine all of you have a county or a part of your country that maybe you look down on a bit, where we were talking before about difference between Scandinavian countries. I won't say what you said to me, but you know, but there might be certain parts of your country you think that the people there are rather stupid. That's Essex. Okay, it's down near London. It has a stigma. I'm just making a little joke, just so it sticks in your head. Towie. The only way is ethics. These are the references. There are web links here to different guidance notes. There's a policy statement. There's our web page, which is the one on the previous slide. And I think that's as much as I want to say to you. Just before I leave, are there any final questions anyone wants to ask me? Is there anything I've said that you weren't sure about, didn't understand? Do you think you all have a reasonable idea what you need to do? Well, you've got to do it. You must do it. I hope you do the right thing. I imagine most of you will do an AMBER piece of research. Yeah? So it'll be AMBER, and I'm sure Michelle or a colleague will approve it with conditions. Can I just say, the most important thing isn't the paperwork, it's what you do in practice. It's how you conduct your research. And I'd rather someone does the right thing without the paperwork than has the paperwork and does the wrong thing. Ideally, I would like to have both. Yeah? Have the paperwork and do the right thing. And your supervisor should, in supervising you, oversee that research process. If you have any further questions, issues, you can contact me. There's my details there. In your faculty, you have a research ethics rep. And that's probably the one thing that's missing from that last slide. In your department, in the faculty, you have a research ethics rep, and that is Sue Childs. So Sue Childs is the research ethics specialist in your department. So if you have any questions, probably you should ask her in the first instance because you're in her department. But if not, you can contact me. You had a question, yeah?
Yeah. Using our literature,
Yeah.
literatures and data in the public domain with a little bit of interviews, right? Is it possible I'll have to provide the interview as evidence, like show confidentiality, or it's just between me and who I talk to?
Well, we need to see in the evidence file, and indeed the dissertation, you can't reach conclusions without showing what evidence you base that on. You know, it's evidence and analysis, and then you reach a conclusion or findings. Yeah, so you've got to show that. It doesn't always go in the bound copy of the dissertation. Some of it will be in the evidence file. But if there's a big gap, like I talked to someone who shall remain anonymous, and here is the answer, we'll just go, well, how did you get there? Where's the data collection, data analysis, yeah, the evaluation of that evidence to reach a finding? So you've got to show that thread, that line, sort of logic, isn't it? So you must evidence that in the research.
So it's very, very ethical.
It's just how you get the data on what conditions and whether you need to reveal the identity of the people. And I think it's when it's in the workplace it gets a little bit tricky. I understand some of you might be doing work-based research, and I know from supervising that it creates some dilemmas. Do you have a question at the back? Yeah.
Yes, if we decide to write the thesis in our own countries, how close do we have to collaborate with the supervisors? Like, do we have to
Okay.
be here physically for the presentation or for meetings?
I won't answer that question. That's definitely a question for Michelle. I know how my students will do it. Usually it's perfectly acceptable for someone to do their research in a different place, and we have arrangements for that and we can manage it. The problem we find, and you might be the same, is when communication breaks down and there's no exchange or no updating as to the progress. So that is a problem. But I think if you remain in communication, there's no reason why you shouldn't conduct some very worthwhile research in a different place. Yeah? But I think that the other details, I'll let Michelle answer that question. Right, I've got a dash because I've got a class now. Lovely to meet you all. I wish you all the best of luck in your studies, and I hope to see you again sometime. Thank you very much.
Thank you.